The 2006 Yogyakarta earthquake occurred at 5:54 local time on the 27th of May with a moment magnitude of 6.4 and a maximum intensity of IX on the Medvedev Sponheuer Karnik scale. The shock occurred on the southern coast of Java near the Indonesian city of Yogyakarta and caused a disproportionate number of casualties, with more than 5,700 deaths and 37,000 injuries, and financial losses of the eruption of Mount Merapi, a stratovolcano that was entering a period of unrest, was originally thought to have a connection with the earthquake. With a lack of instruments in the area, the shock was initially attributed with the Opak Fault that lies to the east of the affected areas, but later InSAR analysis revealed that another previously unknown fracture was responsible for the sequence of shocks. Tectonic setting. The islands of Indonesia constitute an island arc that is one of the world's most seismically active regions, with high velocity per year plate movement at the Sunda Trench, and considerable volcanic activity throughout. The south-central portion of the island of Java had been affected by an eruption of Mount Merapi that began prior to the May 27 earthquake, but the special region of Yogyakarta has experienced numerous other eruptions, earthquakes, and tsunamis, including the Pangandaran earthquake and tsunami that occurred just 2 months later. Java lies on the Sunda Shelf to the north of the Sunda Trench, which is a convergent plate boundary where the Indo-Australian plate is being subducted under the Eurasian plate. The subduction zone is characterized by frequent earthquakes and a large number of active volcanoes that influence the regional geography, and due to direct or indirect stress transfer, the offshore plate movement has affected the various onshore faults that are closer to the special region of Yogyakarta. Earthquake. According to the United States Geological Survey, the shock occurred 20 kilometers south-southeast of Yogyakarta at a depth of 10 kilometers, but other institutions provided source parameters that were not in agreement. No information was present on the extent of the faulting of the direction of propagation, but the shock was unlikely to be related to the eruption of Mount Merapi. The USGS suggested that the focal mechanism was most likely associated with left lateral slip on an ESW trending strike-slip fault, as that is the orientation of the Opak Fault, but this has not been validated. No surface breaks were documented, but the location of the greatest damage that was caused does align with the Opak Fault as a possible source. A group of Japanese and Indonesian scientists visited the area in March 2007 and confirmed the lack of surface ruptures, and pointed out that any visible expression of the fault would likely have been rapidly destroyed due to the tropical climate, and have acknowledged the widely varying locations that were reported by the various seismological institutions. Their investigation resulted in a different scenario, with an unknown and newly formed ESW trending fault as the origin of the shock. Evidence for one of the proposed faults was found in the form of alignment of portions of the Oyo River near the USGS epicenter, which is parallel to the Lipa Fault in the southern mountains region. If the shock occurred in this area, it could indicate the reactivation of a major fault system. The second proposed fault further to the east is nearly parallel to the Lang and Kembang faults that lie to the north of the Oyo River. InSAR analysis. While the densely populated area that saw significant destruction is adjacent to the Opak River Fault, both the USGS and Harvard University placed the epicenter to the east of that fault. Few seismometers were operating in the region, but a group of temporary units that were set up following the main shock recorded a number of aftershocks that were east of the Opak River Fault and were aligned along a 20 km zone striking N degree 50 E. Due to the ambiguous nature of the available information on the source of the the Yogyakarta earthquake. A separate group of Japanese and Indonesian scientists applied one of the first uses of interferometric synthetic aperture radar to determine the source fault. Several data sets were collected from an instrument on board the Advanced Land Observation Satellite and were compared to each other to show potential ground deformation patterns. A lack of any dislocation found on the images along the Opak River fault made evident the lack of movement along that fault, and though the aftershocks were occurring at a depth of 8 to 15 kilometers, the deformation was distinct at the surface. The observed ground deformation that was detailed by the differential satellite images and global positioning system measurements was roughly 10 kilometers east of the Opak River fault, along a zone that passed through the USGS epicenter and delineated a fault with a strike of N 48 degrees east and a dip of 89 degrees. The displacements were not more than 10 centimeters and indicated left lateral strike slip motion as well as a component of reverse slip, and to the west of the Opak River fault strong ground motion triggered subsidence of volcanic deposits from Mount Merapi. Strong motion. In 2006, Mount Merapi had not been active for more than 4 years, but on May 11 a pyroclastic flow triggered the evacuation of more than 20,000 people from the northern sector of Yogyakarta. While authorities expected a larger eruption to follow, the earthquake occurred instead. The volcano's previous eruptions deposited loosely bound sedimentary material in the valley during lava flows. Following the main shock, German and Indonesian scientists set up instruments at several locations situated on different soil types to measure aftershocks. Of 9 events that were analyzed, it was found that the stationate image area of sediment showed signs of local amplification when compared to a location that was built on bedrock, and that the deposits amplified the impact of the earthquake. Response. Although tsunami warnings were issued in the early aftermath of the earthquake did not cause any tsunami activity. Political President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono moved the army to the central Java province to aid rescue efforts and the evacuation of victims. A team of cabinet ministers was also sent to oversee the operations. International aid. Many countries and organizations offered foreign aid to the devastated region, but the actual amounts received often varied from these figures. As in the case of other disasters, Japan promised $10 million, sent 2 medical teams and also announced that it will send troops to help out. The United Kingdom offered £4 million. Saudi Arabia promised $5 million, plus food, medical equipment and tents, while the United Arab Emirates and Kuwait each pledged $4 million. The European Union offered €3 million. The United States offered $5 million. U.S. military joins relief effort. Australia offered $7.5 million Australian dollars in aid relief, including 27-member medical team among over 80 personnel. China offered $2 million US dollars. Canada offered $2 million Canadian dollars. India put forward an aid package worth $2 million. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints donated $1.6 million worth of emergency supplies to devastated areas, teaming up with Islamic Relief Worldwide who provided the transportation. In addition, local Indonesian LDS members prepared thousands of meals, hygiene kits, mattresses, and blankets for those requiring medical attention. The Netherlands promised €1 million in May plus an extra €10 million 1 month later. Belgium has pledged $832,000, while Norway, France and Italy have offered either medical teams or relief supplies. The Red Cross, Red Crescent, Oxfam, Plan International, Jesuit Refugee Service alongside other NGOs and UN agencies, including WFP and UNICEF, provided plastic sheeting, tools and building materials, and cash assistance to the victims. Japan and Malaysia are to send medical teams to the affected region. Singapore offered humanitarian relief assistance in the form of a 35-member armed forces medical team, a 43-member civil defense force disaster assistance and rescue team, as well as $50,000 worth of emergency supplies. The United Nations World Health Organization sent medicines and communications equipment, enough emergency health kits to last 50,000 people 3 months, and surgical kits for as many as 600 operations. Vietnam offered 1,000 tons of rice to Indonesia. The Isle of Man offered £30,000 to Indonesia. King Abdullah II of Jordan ordered to dispatch a plane laden with humanitarian relief to alleviate the suffering of Indonesian earthquake victims that hit Java. The aid included blankets, medicines and other medical equipment. Mercy Malaysia sent 6 missions to Yogyakarta, the first being sent on 28 May 2006. Datuk Dri. Jamila Mahmud, President of Mercy Malaysia, and Saiful Nazri, Program Officer from Mercy ACEH office, went there on the first mission, traveling by a special United Nations Humanitarian Air Services flight from Bandar ACEH along with other international organizations based in ACEH, and 2 tons of medical supplies contributed by the international agencies from ACEH. The first team had secured ground logistics from the subsequent teams coming in from Kuala Lumpur. Media. Most international wire services had already had reporters or stringers in the area due to the Mount Merapi eruption to the north of Yogyakarta. Yogyakarta for many is associated with Borobudur and Prambanan, even though both locations are some distance away from the town. As a result, news stories tend to emphasize the condition of those places. Borobudur suffered no damage, whereas Prambanan, which is much closer to the epicenter, has, according to reports, suffered significant damage. The reporting of the immensity of the problems that were evolving following the earthquake also competed with the crisis in East Timor in the media of some countries like Australia and New Zealand. Reconstruction. The earthquake's shallow depth was a major factor, but the scale of the damage was made worse by failure to meet safe building standards and employ basic earthquake-resistant construction methods. According to Futurock, most homes in the area were built with low-quality materials without structural frames and reinforcing pillars. Many deaths and injuries occurred when buildings and walls collapsed. The government was slow to implement assistance in reconstructing private houses, leading many homeowners to repair or rebuild the homes either by themselves or with community help. Reconstruction in some areas was aided by relief agencies, like the Red Cross Red Crescent. Villages rebuilt the homes with extremely limited resources, using simple, affordable materials. They turned to traditional materials, such as bamboo, because of the damage inflicted by collapsing brick walls.